The Epistles of John. God inspired the Apostle John to write 3 epistles, as well as the Gospel of John and Revelation. Only Paul wrote more books. Although his name appears nowhere in these epistles, that he is the writer is easily seen by comparing them with the Gospel of John and Revelation. For example, John is the only writer who calls Christ the Word, John 1 verses 1 and 14, 1 John 1 verse 1, 5 verse 7, Revelation 19 verse 13. The 3 epistles are written in the same style, and the latter 2 illustrate the doctrine of the first. We have no information as to the dates of his writing outside of his own epistles. No one can help us. Neither ancient writers nor modern critics can tell us anything beyond what we can read for ourselves in John's own writings. All else is conjecture. It is commonly believed that all of his writings were written very late in the 1st century and were the last books to be written 85 to 95 AD. There is absolutely no biblical proof to support that claim. It is likely that John wrote all of his books during the Acts period. The first epistle is not addressed to anyone in particular, as the other 2 are 2 John 1, 3 John 1. John calls his readers little children 9 times in his first epistle. He wrote to the children of the kingdom Matthew 18 verses 1 to 14, John 13 verse 33. In the transition period of the book of Acts, there were 2 distinct groups of believers, the kingdom church and body of Christ. One group was fading out while the other was fading in. As late as Acts 15, it is clear that John's ministry was still to the circumcision, Galatians 2 verse 9, and there is no evidence that ever changed 3 John 7, James 1 verse 1, 1 Peter 1 verse 1. John's epistles, as well as all the Hebrew epistles, have a future application to the Jewish tribulation saints, 1 John 2 verses 18 and 28. John plainly states some of the reasons that he wrote this first epistle, 1 John 1 verses 3 to 4, 2 verses 1 and 26, 5:13. He emphasized knowing the truth 33 times. Throughout his first epistle, John draws stark contrasts. Light versus darkness, 1 John 1 verse 5. Righteousness versus wickedness, 1 John 3 verse 10. Love versus hatred, 1 John 3 verses 14 to 15. Truth versus error, 1 John 4 verse 6. The first sign Christ gave when his disciples asked him about the sign of his coming and the end of the world was that of false Christs, Matthew 24 verses 3 to 5. The main purpose in this epistle is to exalt the true Christ, John 20 verses 30 to 31, and expose the antichrist 4 times, wicked one 4 times. John emphasized the importance of believing that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God who already came in the flesh, 1 John 1 verses 1 to 3, 4:1-3. He also wrote to show the difference between their followers, 1 John 3 verse 10. He gives a series of tests, hereby we know to discern the wheat from the tares, Matthew 13 verses 36 to 43. He often uses the expression, if we say, or he that saith example, 1 John 1 verses 6 and 8, 10, 2:4, 6, 9, 4:20. The little word if is a key word in this epistle, 21 times. The epistles of 2 John and 3 John are the 2 shortest books in the Bible. They are similar in style and were obviously written by the same writer. They are appendixes to the first epistle. The doctrine of 1 John is applied to the home, 2 John 10, and the local assembly, 3 John 9 to 10. The dispensational setting is the same. It is aimed primarily at the tribulation saints living on the last days of Israel's prophetic kingdom program. The theme of 2 John is walking in the truth, verse 4. Introduction and greeting, verses 1 to 3. Commendation for walking in the truth, verse 4. Commandment to love one another, verses 5 to 6. Cautions concerning false teachers, verses 7 to 11. Conclusion and greeting, verses 12 to 13. John wrote his 3rd epistle to a faithful kingdom saint named Gaius. In this letter, He mentioned two other men, Diotrephes and Demetrius, one evil and the other good, 1 John 3 verse 10. Evidently, they were both leaders in the same church. John had written a letter to their church and sent it with certain brethren. They were rejected by Diotrephes, but received by Gaius and Demetrius. Introduction, verse 1. Gaius, verses 2-8. Diotrephes, verses 9-11. Demetrius, verse 12. Conclusion and greetings, verses 13-14. Jude. Jude is the same name as Judas. This epistle of 25 verses and 613 words were written either by the apostle Judas, not Iscariot, Luke 6 verse 16, Acts 1 verse 13, or the Lord's brother, Matthew 13 verse 55. It was probably the latter, since the writer seems to distinguish himself from the 12 apostles, cross-reference us in 2 Peter 3 verse 2 with Jude 17. Jude wrote during the Acts period to the same people that the other Hebrew epistles are written to. The theme of the epistle is stated in verses 3 and 4. The common salvation refers to the salvation which was spoken by the Lord in his earthly ministry concerning the world to come, Hebrews 2 verses 3-5. The tribulation saints must contend for the faith against the apostate teachers that Satan will plant among them, i.e., wolves in sheep's clothing, tares among the wheat. The false teachers will try to add to and take away from the faith that was once delivered unto the saints, Revelation 22 verses 18-19. It is the faith, i.e., doctrine, that was spoken of by the prophets, Christ in his earthly ministry, James 2 verse 1, and his 12 apostles. Introduction, verses 1-2. Purpose of the letter, verses 3-4. Past examples of God judging apostasy, verses 5-7. Portrait of apostates, verses 8-19. Prevention of apostasy, verses 20-25. There are many triplets in this epistle. 1. Sanctified, preserved, called, verse 1. 2. Mercy, peace, love, verse 2. 3. Ungodly, turning, denying, verse 4. 4. The people, angels, the cities, verses 5-7. 5. Defile, despise, speak evil, verse 8. 6. Cain, Balaam, Kor, verse 11. 7. Spots, clouds, trees, verse 12. 8. Fruitless trees, raging waves, wandering stars, verses 12-13. 9. Murmurers, complainers, boasters, verse 16. 10. Separatists, sensual, not the Spirit, verse 19.